Hello, and welcome to another episode of our program, Strategic Change Implementation in Action, on Amogate Radio Communication. I remain your host, Titilola Ogushono. Today, we'll be discussing the role of communication in change implementation. We are all aware that change is an inevitable part of an organization's path to growth and eventual success. Yet, change implementation process mostly appear to be quite challenging, and without deliberate, properly articulated communication strategy, the organization could be thrown into confusion, experience resistance in some cases, or eventual failure of the change agenda. This is why effective communication plays a critical role in successful strategic change implementation. So, communication helps not only to facilitate effective strategic change implementation, but also it assists to generate a synergy that encourages better understanding of the strategic objectives set by an organization. We'll be looking quickly today at some best practices for communication in change management. Like I said earlier, it's very critical that when you are implementing a change agenda, effective communication is paramount in that process. Okay, now the first thing I would want to talk about is the fact that change managers must seek to identify communication goals and objectives. There is a change plan. There's a change in your plan. It could be the fact that the vision of the organization has changed. It could be that you are introducing a new product, service, or even in terms of growth expansion process. Whatever it is that you intend to introduce as a change manager, it's important that the first step you need to take is to identify your communication goals and objectives. This helps you to articulate the expected outcomes of the change. Yes, you know the vision. Yes, you are aware about what the strategic intention is, but you must be able to identify, itemize, picture what the expected outcomes of that change would be. And that must not be far-fetched. It must be in line with the vision of the organization, because this helps you to get the buy-in of stakeholders. Now that you have identified what the expected outcomes of those changes are, very key, very important metrics, indicators. Once you have that, what are you expected to do? I would expect that after this articulation or identification of the communication goals and objectives, is that you must develop an effective communication plan. I will take it again. Once you have identified the communication goals and objectives, I would expect that you develop an effective communication plan. The communication plan is usually drafted or designed to increase awareness, and the importance of communication plan again is to foster engagement of employees, foster engagement of all stakeholders, okay, which includes the employees. Your communication plan must include your vital messages. What is the key message? What is that message that you are passing across? We would always advise, okay, from experience, that you must create a clear and concise message. We don't need too many words. You need to be clear. You need to use simple language that people can understand. It's what they understand that they actually work with. It must be clear. And this will state the reasons for the change. Your communication plan should state the reason for the change, should state the expectations, your expectation as management from your stakeholders, and also it also includes their expectations from you in the change process. We would always say that. But one thing you should look at is that you must involve the evaluation of critical components. Now, there's some critical components in the change process. And when you are communicating, you must be able to assess some critical components. The first that I would say is you must understand the current business environment. You must understand the environment of your organization. You must understand the complexity of the industry. Now, when you understand the current business environment, then you can move on to to look at identifying the stakeholders. In our previous episode, we talked about the different kinds of stakeholders that you could have. You have your internal stakeholders, which includes your employees. You have your external stakeholders, the suppliers. You have your customers. You have the government. You have regulatory agencies. You have even the community where your organization is situated. Your environment is really important. And in case of multinationals, we have also need to look at even the politics, international politics involved that could affect your organization, be positively or negatively, as the case may be. So you need to evaluate these things, the critical component, the current business environment, the stakeholders, your internal stakeholders, your external stakeholders. You need to look at the channels of communication. How best would I communicate my message to my stakeholders? How best can they assess me? In what manner would I talk to them? In what tools will I use to deploy my message? Am I going to use visuals? It will be more of internal communication, your intramural. You need to look at those channels of communication critically. And what are the needs of my people? You need to know that proper understanding of each stakeholder will help you to plan and address communication needs. If you look at your stakeholders, their needs are diverse. So how you're going to communicate to them will help you customize. It's not going to be a one-size-fits-all approach in terms of the best strategy to deploy. You will look at the best strategy to deploy, the best approach, the tactics that be involved in communicating to your stakeholders. This is very, very, very paramount, okay? Because it also helps you to even identify the pain points that the strategic implementation plan would address. It's important because once you understand what their needs are, once you understand what the expectations are, then you can articulate what the pain points would be, and in solving those pain points will be will form part of the ingredient of your strategic communication plan. Developing this is very important. Now let's look at identifying the communication channels. Okay, we've always said a communication plan should be aligned with strategic change goals and objectives. And there are various channels with which you can communicate with them. Like it could be emails, it could be training sessions, you could use your dashboard, your meetings, as the case may be. Now, you need to understand in your communication plan that you must also have your feedback system. You must inculcate it. Communication is not complete once you get the feedback from the recipients of the information. So it's a change process. They must open up those mechanisms, must open up those channels. When people, your stakeholders can give you feedback, it's very important. It could even be as simple as having suggestion boxes. It could be simple as having stand-up town hall meetings. It could be simple as having somebody somewhere, a box where they can tick, or even taking surveys, virtual forms will not take less than 2 minutes to fill, not more than 5 minutes to fill. These are things that you must calculate in your communication plan. And it's important, what you do not measure, you cannot monitor. And what you cannot monitor effectively, it's not likely to improve. Okay, so it's important that you come up with your key performance indicators that you're going to use to measure progress. So how do you know that these channels of communication are effective? How do you know that what you have intended to achieve with the change agenda through your communication plan, through your communication strategy, is actually effective? So from the onset, you must have your key performance indicators embedded in your strategic communication plan so that you can monitor progress. It's important. You have your communication plan. What are also those things? What are those best practices that you can also inculcate, you can look at in order to achieve effective change implementation? You must identify and engage change champions from different levels of management. You must identify, I'll take it again, and engage change champions from different levels of management. Interestingly, why I know that most of the time the strategic thinking is likely to come from top management, top executives, but in implementing change process, in communicating to your people, in communicating to all relevant stakeholders. It won't only come from top executive. It wouldn't. It won't be effective if it all comes from you. So it's important to identify leaders, okay, from top executives to middle level managers and even supervisors, into people in supervisory roles, to act as champions and role models for the change agenda. It's important that you involve them, different people, unit heads, top executive, middle level managers, to champion the change. They must own it. Now, interestingly, realize that employees connect to different level of management in various ways. They feel more at home. They feel that's what research has shown. They feel more at ease with their direct supervisors. They feel that this sense of confidence, that this sense of assurance that you can understand them because you interface with them every day. So that kind of closeness that you cannot take away. So as a change manager, you need to leverage on that closeness. You need to leverage on people. People don't know they don't care how much you know, or they know how much you care about them. So when there's that level of closeness, that connectivity, you can leverage on it to allow those unit heads, to allow those in supervisory roles that are closest to your internal stakeholders, your employees, for them to champion the change. It's important. If you are just joining us, thank you so much for joining. We are discussing the role of communication in change implementation, how critical communication is in implementing your change agenda. And we're talking about the best practices for communication in change management. And we're talking about how to identify and engage change champions from various levels of management, from the top executive to your middle-level managers, your unit heads, and even those in supervisory roles. They play a major role in communicating the change agenda to your people, to your relevant stakeholders. This is very important. Okay, now you could ask and say, how do I choose my change champion? Are there things I need to consider when choosing my change champion? If I've identified them, what do I need? Interestingly, yes, there are people they can trust, but you need to conduct communication skills assessment for your people. Okay, those you have identified, that would act as your change champions. You to understand their current level of communication skills. Can they communicate effectively? The level of communication that you need to allow your people understand and get their buy-in of the change agenda, those you have chosen today are the required communication skills. Now, what you need sometimes might not be basic communication skills. What you could need could actually be at the advanced level of communication skills. Okay, so but when you conduct your communication skills assessment, you let you know if there's any gap between desired, needed skills level, communication skills level, and actual or current skills level. So if there is a gap between what you need to communicate the change and what they actually have, that current skills level, if there is a gap evident, then you can look at what to do. Definitely people have their strengths and their weaknesses. I would say and advise that you play to their strengths in allocating roles. Once you have assessed them, you know those the required communication skill level for this change process, then you can assign people, play to their strengths, assign them to where they're best at. Now, sometimes some skills level are needed across board. So what do you do when you have identified that gap? You can support with adequate interventions in areas needed. Because whether I like it or not, top executive alone cannot communicate change to everyone. You can communicate it from the top, but how do you get the buy-in, ownership of the change process? Everyone must be on board. Everyone must be involved. It's important that we understand this and we work with this. It's important. And most times I always say that the wifing principle applies to everyone. And I would say the wifing principle simply means what is in it for me? What do I get to gain from this change process why do I need this? So in coming up with your communication plan, it's always advisable to always put that wifing principle to each level of stakeholders. For instance, my suppliers, why do I need this change? You need this change so that I can automate your process, so that, for instance, if what we're going to do is automate your process, and you are allowing the suppliers to say, look, once you get our system automated, then you can get, that when you supply us goods, instead of paying you in 21 days, it will shorten the process by 7 days. So it means that within 14 days after supplies to your organization, they can get their money. That is what is in need for them. Now they know that they can get their money for 7 days earlier than what they've been used to. I'm telling you, you are brought to the table. They're likely to have the attention. What is the need for the employees? You're telling the employees that, look, once you automate this process, okay, then we can reduce our costs by 30% or 40%, and we can also increase your incentives by 10%. Is likely, to get the attention as well. So you need to understand what that wifing principle. When you are communicating the change to them, they're ready to sacrifice A and B if they know that they are also going to get some incentives to themselves. So it's important when we are doing the change process, okay? I would also say that one thing we need to do after choosing your change champions, still talking about your communication plan, is for you to evaluate the communication plan or process. You must evaluate your communication plan or process. Okay, you must assess from time to time the effectiveness of the communication strategy. We've spoken about the channels of communication. How do I want to communicate with them? Which is more effective for external stakeholders? For instance, if you are taking up to say, let's go to our social media platforms, let's communicate to them. Let's go to the company intranet, let's communicate to them. How do you know which of these channels have been effective? If you have not put it as plan of your communication plan to evaluate your communication channels, the plan that must be there. At what point do we evaluate? You must set timelines. I've implemented this communication strategy. Do I wait till the next 1 year before I evaluate how effective it has been? Do I look at it after the first 3 months of implementing the change agenda? You must have that timeline to check how effective have your channel of communication been. How effective have your change champions that you have identified, that you have engaged to champion this change, how effective have they been? You need to set timelines. As an organization, the case may be 3 months, maybe when you're just introducing a change plan, check how it has been the first quarter. Some would say, okay, let's do it biannually. Let's do it the first 6 months that we evaluate. Then after then, we evaluate in the next 3 months. But you need to find what suits you. You need to find what works for organization so that you assess the effectiveness of the communication strategy. And I always say, once you have set metrics, like I said, the key performance indicators, there are metrics to monitor if you are progressing or not. Then you have tools that would, for you to evaluate the process, you must have set up effective feedback system. There must be effective feedback system that you are getting feedback from your people. So based on that feedback that you have gotten, then you can evaluate how important this has been. And you have to be deliberate. Sometimes some people might not even bother to drop feedback. That's why I talk about culture. You must have cultural practices in your organization that support people to be able to hear their views without the slightest fear of being victimized. You must create that culture where people can trust the system, where people feel safe within your system, and they are free to express their mind. You must have a culture that people do not feel stifled. You don't stifle that level of creativity, that level of engagement. Once you have any cultural practice that stifles employees' initiative, then you're not going to get the feedback from them. Now, I will ask, take feedback as a gift as an organization, but you have to wait till they even give you that feedback. Oh, so what happens? Nobody has dropped anything in the suggestion box. What then do you do? What you can do is that periodically, like I said, it could be 3 months, 6 months, you must seek to test the pulse of your employees on the change agenda objective. You must seek to test the pulse of your employees about the communication plan strategy that you have adopted as an organization. You must seek the employee surveys that can be filled online virtually. You can decide to do one-on-one interviews. I recall a time when an organization called on us and Armorgate to help them look at the culture audit, communication plan. And what we did was to allow them go anonymous. Okay, fill this. And we had one-on-one session with them, interviews. And because we promised them that the process will be anonymous, to be fair, just no one will be victimized, we got good feedback from them, which helped us go back to the drawing board and profile our solution to organization. And they deployed what we advised and it helped them. So it's important that you must test the pulse of your employees. Test the pulse of not just the employees, of all relevant stakeholders. So we'll let you know if your strategic plan, if your strategic communication plan is effective or not. And it also helps you to even know the knowledge of the level of acceptance. It even helps you to know the level of knowledge of employees about the change agenda. Some of them might not even understand what you mean. What are you seeking to achieve? They might not even know. So when you communicate effectively and you evaluate that plan, you can get feedback. Oh, on a scale of 0 to 10, how well do my people understand this change objective? It could be 5. So if it's 5, then you know, okay, there is hope that we need to improve. If it's 8, you know that is effective. But you could realize sometimes that it's even less than 3%. It means majority of the people don't even understand what you are doing. They don't understand what the change agenda is all about. So it helps you to go back to the drawing board. It's important. It helps you to even know the level of how well have they accepted the change. Because effective communication plan would help you know. They will be communicated, two-way communication system. It will help you know. And also, even when people are resisting the change, once you have carefully, strategically crafted out your employee pulse surveys, then you can know when there is a low level of resistance to change, if there's moderate level of resistance to change, or extremely high level of resistance to change, could actually be a very big red flag in organization. It's important that we keep evaluating. If you do not evaluate, if you do not monitor, you cannot improve, and if you do not improve, desired change objective agenda cannot be achieved. Okay, and I will also wrap it up to say the last point, that you must keep communicating from the initial stage before implementing your change agenda, in the midst of the change agenda, at the end of the period that initially crafted out for the change process to end. You must keep communicating. Why? Because when you review and there's a need for you to change some critical components, there might be a need for you to change your key processes, there might be a need for you to even change some roles, there might be a need for you to merge some units together, there might be a need for you to create another unit, there might be a need for you to even diversify your product line, there might need a need for you to even close down a particular service. You will still have to communicate all of these changes that you have identified back to your stakeholders, and you must also get their buy-in on the change process. So communication is continuous. It doesn't end. But once you have carefully articulated your communication plan by looking at all of these variables, all of these parameters I have mentioned, you realize that where the bulk of the work is a communication plan. You realize that achieving the strategic intent of the change manager, of the leaders of the organization, would be realizable. It's very important. Okay, thank you so much for staying tuned to the end of this program. Before we draw the curtain, if you have any questions, comments for us, kindly send your mail to contact@thearmorgate.org for questions, comments, feedback. Kindly send your mail to contact@thearmorgate.org. or you can send us a WhatsApp message on our WhatsApp line +234 8079574151. I'll take the WhatsApp line again +234 8079574151. I will leave us with the words of John F. Kennedy. He says, "Change is the law of life, and those who look only to the past or present are certain to miss the future." Thank you so much. Hope to have you here. Same time, same station next week. I remain your host, Titilola Ogunshono. Bye from here.